Before I play the intro, I just wanted to let you know that I've turned off the comment section on my YouTube videos due to a person with different usernames or several people spamming me almost daily with comments saying how I'm the reason Graham/Ty left the show. Now, obviously, they have no idea who they're talking to. They just see the word Heartland and think I'm someone affiliated with the show. But I'm slowly running out of ways to explain what a fan means and how I have no control over anything happening in the show or behind the scenes. If you have a problem with Graham leaving the show, I suggest you contact him directly as he requested to leave and asked the writers to kill off the character he played. So it's gotten to a point where I don't have time or energy to moderate the YouTube comment sections because I want to focus on the comments the rest of you send my way. If you wish to take part of that conversation we're having, I welcome you to this podcast Instagram account, H2HL Podcast. And for those people or one person with too much energy, I encourage you to volunteer at the local shelter, deep clean your house, or just start a new hobby. You're better off, trust me. As for the rest of you, let's crack on. Hi, my name is Soile, and you're listening to Heart to Heartland, a fan podcast from a fan perspective. Welcome back to the podcast. I really don't have any housekeeping besides the one I made before the intro. Well, no other housekeeping other than in this episode we talk about episode 3 of season 18. So if you haven't seen that yet, don't go forward unless you don't mind the spoilers. So let's just get started with your comments, shall we? Sharon said, really enjoyed this episode. Logan is always in a rush, constantly putting himself under pressure, comparing himself to his mom and Amy. Surprised he's talking about marriage. He's way too immature to even consider marriage yet. He needs to explain himself fully to Miley to help her understand. It was great to see Lisa with her story and not just with the family. It was great to see a hearing impaired person conducting the interview. I thought that Tim and Jessica told each other everything, but he reverted to his old ways, shutting Jessica out and putting Katie in an awkward position. Katie is like Lou. She can see other people's problems and not her own. Hopefully, she will fix her writing class problem. The first time Bay has been in the loft. Amy was forthright towards Logan, which he needed. It's good to see that Amy and Nathan are speaking to each other and how he held her back before the water came. The way that they hugged each other is the start of their relationship. It was nice to see. Jack, true crit or true stupid, thanks to Katie and Lisa, his instinct and their confidence in him pushed him forward. As for me, I appreciated seeing more of Logan's side of things because clearly he's going through something. And I could really understand where he was coming from with, not having the kind of background Amy does or anyone basically back him up. Well, besides Amy. And then hearing more about his background and how that causes him anxiety and this like rush to get into things before something bad happens or life ends or whatever. I think it is something that a lot of people can relate to. And I do appreciate the way Amy kept him close and had that communication going. Like, even though Logan said some things that he later regretted, she could understand that they were coming from some kind of hurt and that hurt needed to be heard. So I did like that. And I have to agree with Sharon. I was really surprised to hear Logan saying how he is thinking of marrying Miley, and especially under these circumstances, like it's clear that they're not communicating well. I hope that Logan is sort of rethinking that. I'm not saying you couldn't get married young, but I just feel like it's not some kind of fix to a difficult decision or an uncomfortable feeling or whatever else is going on with your life. So I do wonder if that is going to happen and if we'll see something happening before that. Oh, and I also noticed that Sharon added, glad that Jack and Nathan open up to each other. This is the start for Nathan's story. Not having Lou there as she is part of the Heartland beef wasn't right, but understandable due to Michelle doing pre-production for the next 2 episodes. Sorry this is long, but had a bit to say. LOL. Yeah, I was surprised to see that Lou wasn't there, or she wasn't really even acknowledged in any part of the episode. I'm just gonna assume that she went to Vancouver to see Peter. It is interesting that they didn't even like consider her having to know what's going on with the water situation, because even though she can't really do anything, she's a partner in this business and she deserves to know. And just like imagining her coming home and like seeing them selling off cattle or land and being like, excuse me, what's happening here? Like, could someone care to fill me in? Like, even though she's away and maybe relaxing a bit, it doesn't mean that she doesn't deserve to know. And Smoking Holster said, another enjoyable episode, very Heartland-like in its nature. I enjoyed it. No idea where Lou is and where Lisa and Jessica were, but okay. The writers don't deal with this stuff well. Let's start with the 3 points of show canon. First, Lisa and Jack talk about wills after they get married, citing that they have great and great great grandchildren they have to look after. Lisa has also mentioned both Amy and Georgie as successors to Fairfield, though they were forgotten as the story moved on. Second, am I crazy, but doesn't Tim wear reading glasses early in the show? I could be wrong about this. And lastly, Amy and Ty dug a well for their new and never to be built home. They struck water on their third attempt and did it on Heartland as opposite to on Nathan's land. Nathan, Jack, and Amy. I wasn't too thrilled with Jack berating Nathan on the fence line. So far, and I realize this could change, Nathan has been nothing but a good neighbor and a fair competitor. I get that he's been made the enemy by Lou, Jack, and Tim, but nothing we've seen points to Nathan being anything other than what he said, though I do think he's pretty much on his own on the ranch, meaning he has no foreman or permanent ranch hands and is possibly struggling. I'm glad Jack apologized and that Nathan stepped up once again as a good neighbor to share the water found on his land. I love the last scene with him and Amy hugging, and the three of them, along with Lindy, standing off to the side together, and of course I'm glad they found water. Lastly, on this topic, I love the Lindy line about brushing her teeth, since I remember a scene with Amy, Lou, and Georgie, and a similar sentiment about teeth brushing. Amy and Logan. This guy so much reminds me of Ty's I have to do this or that to be a man logic that it's almost disturbing. He seems the kind of guy to really have more of an issue with what Miley and her family have than dealing with trying to pull himself up based on his talents. Ty never felt he was good enough for Amy, and I think Logan has the same issue. Clearly, he's not ready for marriage. Lisa and the interview. For all the reasons listed by the others, the signing for a deaf professional, her attitude towards her business and what success means, and her keeping to her gut feeling, it was nice all around. Jack and Lisa. As always, they hint at their ages and make nothing of it. I like seeing them together and their encouragement of each other's endeavors, but there really should be something more to in all this, especially with Jack, who is basically 90-ish. Katie, Tim, and Jessica. Eyeglasses? Seriously? Seem to me neurological or circulatory regather than eye strain and tenseness. I enjoyed the interactions between Katie and all three adults. She's definitely maturing and base acting is very good. She'll be something to watch in the coming years. I do find the enemy talk a little bit funny at times with Jack, Lou, and Tim. Like, I understand they feel threatened and the stakes are high and it's really difficult to do their business right now, but at the same time, it's sometimes like, okay, chill with that because it's like Smoking Horse just said, like Nathan has been pretty good with them bashing him or being kind of snarky with the way they talk to him and all that. But I'm glad that Nathan hasn't kind of gone along with that. Like he maybe scoffs a little bit or smiles like, okay, yeah. But then he doesn't really like escalate the situation. So I do appreciate that. I was really glad to see that Jack understood that the way he behaved was uncalled for, and Nathan offering his help and them sort of teaming up. I could see this being a really interesting relationship in the future. So I'm hoping that on top of the scenes with Amy, Nathan has scenes with other characters as well, because it is always fun to see characters outside their pairings sort of interact with other characters and bring out new sides to them, or them bringing new sides out of that character. I was wondering if there would be any Amy and Nathan scenes in this episode. It at first seemed like maybe there wouldn't be, but then the ending came and I was like, oh, this is nice. But I was a little bit surprised because the last time we saw them together was when Nathan dropped in to bring the check for Jack, and they had that little talk with what's going on. I know that Nathan came in to see Amy, but then he saw Amy and Caleb, and he sort of assumed what was happening and rode off. But I was surprised to see how close they were. I was expecting a little bit more tension, but I guess seeing the way Nathan helped Heartland maybe soften Amy up, and I did like the hug and just seeing them together with Lindy and all that. So I did find it cute, but I was kind of like, am I missing a scene here? But I did like that. Then AEL Horses said, I love this episode. I think Heartland is at its best when there are serious storylines. They do well with humorous ones too, but the serious ones are usually so good, and this Trot one was no exception. Also, this episode became 10 times better than last week's, just with Lisa and Jessica showing up in the first 5 minutes. Love them finally being in an episode. Too bad that this was a family-centric episode, but Lou wasn't there. I feel like this always happens with the show. There's a family-centric storyline, but always at least one person isn't there. I do wonder if the Trot thing will still be an issue after this episode. I would assume and hope so, just because they only found a well. It still hasn't rained. I really like Jack and Nathan's scenes. Them eventually getting along and bonding bodes well with Nathan and Amy. I enjoyed the little bit more we heard of Nathan's past. I hope we eventually get to see his dad, but I have a feeling something is wrong, so we won't. This episode leans into there being something wrong, specifically with his dad, but I also thought of this in episode 1 when he tells Amy he's dealing with something. I'm hoping we learn about that and what happened with the Garland food situation in the next week's episode. I love the shot of Jack on the hill overlooking his land. I also love seeing Tim and Jack supporting each other in this difficult situation. They've come such a long way. My favorite scene by far was the ending scene with the whole family. Tim saying to Jack, I'm with you 100%, and Jack putting his arm around Tim when they were celebrating was so nice to see. I will say though, I can't take the diviner thing seriously. Every time I've seen this used in a show, it's supposed to be funny, so that's what I'm used to. This is the first time I've seen it used as an actual way to find water. Also, I was definitely not expecting an Amy and Nathan scene this episode, but they had such a good one. The hug was so cute. Not to mention, the way Amy, Nathan, and Lindy were standing really made them look like a family. I also really liked Lisa's storyline, especially because I wasn't expecting one. We always love seeing her out of the kitchen, but I also love seeing her being the businesswoman she is. It was also nice to see sign language incorporated into the show. Everything in Lisa's storyline really made me think of the cloning storyline in season 11 and how that's a new technique. I was surprised they brought up Latin bow. Jack and Lisa were cute, as always, especially in the porch and when they were hugging at the end. I also loved how Lisa used Jack's own advice against him at the end. I will say, Lisa not having a plan in place for eventual retirement is kind of weird. Like she may not be close to retiring, but she's closer to retiring than not. And I would think she would have some sort of idea of who she wants to take Fairfield over. Thought it was weird for her character. I also like them mentioning she and Jack saying, I would know. At least they are sort of addressing how old he is, but also not really. Lisa's speech when she went back to the interview was so good. I love that she did sign language back too. Logan's storyline didn't do much for me, but I'm glad they brought up that Amy has done this before. It was nice to see Amy on Spartan, but Logan was riding Shadow, so that made me realize he doesn't have his own horse, I guess. It was also nice to see the jumping course. I did like Amy talking to Logan about the pressures he's under, but I would have liked for her to go in more detail about the pressure she was under at his age. It would make Logan see she really can relate. Though I would argue the pressure Amy was under was a lot worse. I was very surprised that Logan mentioned marrying Miley. I did think that the Tim and Katie storyline was going to be more serious. It started out that way, especially because it's the same symptoms she had in season 11. That's why I was surprised that Tim brought up CTA first rather than what happened to him in season 11. It was nice to see Katie acting more mature and asking the tough questions to Jack, which was a great scene. I also feel like Katie hardly ever calls him Grandpa, but I honestly can't remember. I also feel like Katie has never had a one-on-one scene with Jessica. Tim apologizing to Katie shows growth. The scene where Tim gets glasses was so funny. Jessica's reaction was so good, and Tim's line about I'm going to look like Jack was super funny too. Not how lighthearted I thought this storyline was going to end. In general, I also appreciate the little things they have the Spencer twins say or do to make them really seem like kids. Lindy saying she doesn't have to brush her teeth and then covering her ears at the end with the drilling are exactly the kind of things kids would do. I think my favorite line though was Jack saying there are a fine line between true grit and true stupid. I'm really looking forward to next week's episode. Sorry, that was a super long review. Haha. I agree with a lot of this, so I'm not going to repeat everything you just said, but it is funny that I was just talking to some of my Heartland friends a couple of days ago how it's kind of weird, like how Lisa and Jessica are gone. And then I jokingly said, like, what if they went to a road trip together? Now, obviously, well, or I don't know if they did, but it wasn't explained. But it's funny seeing that in episode 6 something similar happens, so it's kind of funny that I said that, but I would have loved the idea of seeing Lisa and Jessica bonding and going off to a road trip or something together. I really like the Lisa storyline as well. I was nervous when I saw the interviewer using sign language. I was like, oh, is this story gonna be like really awkward? Like, is Lisa gonna do something she maybe shouldn't have, and then it becomes awkward with the disability and all that? So I was scared. Okay, but then it was like, no, that's not the point of the story at all, and I was like, oh, thankfully, because it's always good to see that people are more than their disability or anything like that, because it's not necessarily the focus of the story. So I really like that, and especially in the end when Lisa did the thank you sign, and I was like, oh, that's really nice. Like she really showed that she was paying attention and she was appreciating this opportunity. And I love what she said about what success means for her. Even though she has money or has had money, I'm kind of like still not sure what's going on with Fairfield, because one minute she's thinking of selling it and then she's not, and then she has money, then she doesn't. So it's kind of like I'm not even keeping up at this point. But I did like what she said about what success means to her, even though with someone with her background, with money and all that, it's easy to say the things she said, but I also know that as a character, she really stands behind those words. And she really is that kind of person who appreciates things that are not related to money when it comes to success and the well being of her staff and the animals in her care. So I did really like the Lisa storyline and how it really highlighted who she is as a character, because she often is in the background or she's supporting the other characters. And it's like, no, we have this really badass, successful businesswoman among us. And she is not only that, but she's very kind hearted and loving and all the good things. So I really like the focus on Lisa in this episode. Then Lisa Can Forever said, I really like this episode and agree with the comments already posted. Just one thing, Tim already had reading classes before. At least I remember the scene of the fishing episode, season 3, in the Heartland living room when Lou suggests that Jack takes Tim fishing with him. I guess they landed in the now dried up well. I've seen people pointing this out as well. And I guess he either lost them or got rid of them or something like that. But when it comes to the Tim storyline, I was kind of like, okay, where is this going? Because just like AEL Horses said in the previous comment, it really reminded me of season 11. So I was kind of like, why all of a sudden go with this again? Not that, there's anything wrong with having serious storylines like that, but I guess with this show, I'm never optimistic that they've actually done well. Sorry, because it's always like, oh, it was nothing. I'm fine. And it sort of was the thing with this episode as well. But for a moment, I was like, okay, like, interesting that they're bringing up this kind of storyline, especially with what's going on with the Heartland Beef storyline, because it seems like maybe Jack is slowing down a bit in the light of the preview for the next episode. And then to think that Tim would maybe have something serious going on, it's like, well, okay, so it's all on Lou at this point. Like, what's gonna happen? Like, is she gonna merge with Nathan or invite Amy into the business, or what's gonna happen? Then it turned out to be about the classes. I mean, it was pretty funny in the end, especially with Jessica and Katie being like, oh gosh, like, okay, give us the bad news. Like, what's going on? I also was thinking, like, because in the beginning of the episode, Jessica makes this whole point about the water in the loft coming out really slowly. And of course, in the context of the well and the water situation, it's like, yeah, that would happen. But I was thinking, like, oh, is this a clue? Like, maybe there's something in the pipes or in the water, maybe some kind of toxic stuff, and Tim is suffering because of it, because he's been living in the loft. Jessica has been away, so maybe she hasn't been poisoned yet or something like that, but then it was the classes. But yeah, it was a nice storyline in a way that we saw Tim's growth a little bit, because he owned up to what he did, keeping the secret from Jessica and putting Katie in a difficult situation. And then we saw scenes with Katie and Jack and all that. So it is a good reminder that sometimes, even though this is a TV show, that sometimes people don't get it right the first time or even the second time, but they should still keep trying. Then Stephanie said, this episode was so good, like 8 out of 10. I love the moments between Lisa and Jack, and how encouraging he was of Lisa and help her get her confidence back to continue the interview. I also appreciated that they included sign language into the show, and Lisa even signed thank you back at the end. It was such a cool little detail. It's things like that that help make the show feel more realistic. Also love hearing about Lisa's business and the challenges, but the rewards that come with the job. The Logan storyline was alright. I was a little surprised he was talking about wanting to marry Miley. I feel like he still needs a lot more time to mature and grow before he should really consider taking that step. Or at least being more willing to be open and honest with Miley. Because if he can't do that while they're dating, that's going to lead to some problems down the road. I love seeing Jessica. AEL Horses pointed this out, but I have to agree with her and say I feel like these episodes are also so much better when Jessica and Lisa are involved. And the storylines are more serious. It keeps me more invested and wanting to know what's going to happen next. Although I feel like Tim's potential health scare was a bit anticlimactic, I did enjoy the scene where he finds out he needs glasses and makes a comment about looking like Jack. That was so funny. I did also like that when Katie was worried about Tim, she went to Jack for advice, then later told Jessica her concerns, which then causes Tim and Jessica to talk and for him to explain his worries and admit he shouldn't have kept these things from her or ask Katie to keep it a secret. I love character growth like that. To continue, I did also really enjoy the scenes between Nathan and Jack. It was nice to see them getting along, eventually, and do hear about his past. I'm looking forward to hopefully discovering more as the season goes on. I didn't expect a Nathan and Amy moment at the end, but it definitely made me happy. Their hug when the guy found the water was so cute. Again, AEL Horses did point this out, and I have to agree. The way Amy was holding Lindy and Nathan standing there with his wig, it says with his wig wrapped around Amy was just perfect, but I don't know what the word is supposed to be. Maybe his arm. I don't know. They really did look like a little family. As always, can't wait for the next week. I was surprised about the hug. I know I talked a little bit about that, but reading that reminded me that I understand that Amy was really thankful, but I was kind of like, oh my gosh, are you just gonna, hug in front of the whole family? Like, is that what's happening here? Like, acting as if that's like making out all of a sudden. But just like, I don't know that a lot of people know that they're close, or is that just me? I know that they might suspect, but because obviously they're spending a lot of time together, but it's kind of like I'm assuming that they don't know how close they are. I know hug is not like a big thing to other people, but I feel like in this case, it sort of is. I also noticed when we had that first scene with Tim and Jessica, like, oh, I've missed Jessica, and I always love seeing her with Tim, so it was nice to see her back as well. Just like it was nice to see Lisa back. And while I did like her interview stuff, I was sort of surprised, but also not, to hear Lisa say she's kind of old school. Yes, we've seen that, but at the same time, I'm forever haunted by the cloning of a horse storyline. And I still feel, I felt it back then, but I still feel it now. And especially after this episode, that was so out of character for Lisa to have her have a cloned horse. Like, that's new tech, I would say. But, there are a lot of writers, there are a lot of little storylines to keep up with, like Tim's classes and all those kind of things. So I'm just gonna have to like let those go and enjoy the bigger picture, so to speak. Then Story Chemist said, surprised Lisa was in the episode and had a nice storyline as well. I like this episode. Feels like season 18 finally started. Watched the episode 4 trailer, and I am so excited about that Lisa and Jack conversation because that is something we all know needs to be spoke about. That's actually a nice segue to talking about episode 4, which airs tomorrow on CBC Gem. And again, the episode we just talked about airs on CBC TV tomorrow. So the fourth episode is called Into the Unknown. The weight of the Hudson rumor mill leads Jack to make a surprising decision. Amy works with a polo pony and sees a new side of Nathan in the process. And what Story Chemist was referring to, there's a preview out with, well, basically the polo pony storyline And then we have Jack and Lisa talking about the future. And then Amy and Nathan having misunderstandings and problems with communicating, all of that stuff. So it really looks like an interesting episode, and we should come back next week to talk about that. So until then, keep your noses clean and your powder dry, as they say. I'll talk to you next week. Bye.